to Let's Talk Evolution, the podcast where real life experiences meet the complexities of today's tech industry. Each episode, we dive into a specific topic with thought leaders who know the systems, the structures, and the nuances that drive the industry. This series is all about exploring the inner workings of tech and learning from the people who understand it best. I'm Danelle from Evolution Recruitment Solutions, and today I am your host. Today, we're diving into one of the most human sides of business, which is sales, and exploring how AI is transforming the way teams operate, engage, and grow. From automation and analytics to predictive insights and personalization, AI is reshaping how sales teams connect with customers and make decisions. But beyond the buzz, the real question is, what does the future of sales look like when human connections meet machine intelligence? Joining us today is Vincent Limanto, Head of Commercial Sales at GitLab, a company helping organizations simplify, automate, and accelerate how they build software. Vincent leads sales teams across Southeast Asia, and he's been right in the intersection of sales, technology, and leadership. He's traveling across the region, helping teams to adapt to change and building what he calls a growth-minded sales culture. Vincent, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Before
Well,
we dive into the conversation, could you share a little bit more about yourself and your journey?
sure. No, thanks for this time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity as well. Look, let me just introduce myself a little bit. Like, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, I've been over decades in sales itself, and like in the past, like 14, 15 years of my professional life, like I've seen a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of different evolutions in terms of the technology itself, the way we run sales, and I've been working in various different company in various different capacity. I started from a technical background as someone that may not be like it's not something that someone it's not normal path that people take. Like so normally people just go straight in sales, but I took from a technical person, technical path first before I moved on into sales. Then from then on, I developed myself. I'm looking to like, hey, can I do more? How can I be developing myself even more? Then I moved on to like people management. So it's been a journey so far, and I think career is always like that. It's never a straight line. It's always a journey of toss and turn, like exploring yourself as well as like trying new things. And I think that's be brave. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. I think when we last spoke, you mentioned that GitLab is gearing up for a product launch and expanding its sales presence across Asia. So it sounds like you've seen firsthand how AI is starting to reshape your team's operation day to day. So from your
Yeah.
perspective, right, how is AI changing the way your team works, and what tools or technologies have made the biggest impact for you so far?
That's a really good question. I think in the past 10 years, the way I look at it, I think AI is one of the major change that's happening in the industry. That's not just disrupting from a technology point of view, but the way we run things and the way we do business. And that's from a sales point of view. I think apart from CRM, AI is the next big leap that is really disrupting and really changed the way we operate. Now, I think the
Hmm.
way I look at it, there are three areas where we are really seeking impact. But before that, I would like to also mention that I've been in sales and I've been seeing this AI. I don't think that AI is going to replace salespeople, right? I think it's going to replace the manual work, the jobs, the parts that we really don't want to do, and really to help us to automate and accelerate that, right? So, and these are the three areas where I normally see how AI helps us. I think first thing first is really in the area of lead scoring, lead qualifications, and lead outreach, right? So I think these are really tedious work, right? How you can look at like which leads are ready, which leads are worth talking to, which leads are yet you want to reach out. Now AI can help to process like many different parts of data, many different permutations of possibilities, and that helps us to prioritize, to look at different knowledge, different informations to help us to know, hey, these are the kind of leads that we have to reach out to. The second part of it is really helpful, especially for sales, is in the area of what I would say as a conversations intelligence, right? I think in the past, when someone's want to improve in their sales, they have to record themselves, they have to listen to their recording, and someone's together with them, and also to listen, maybe the manager as well, or sales coach, to help them to understand in which area, in what kind of messaging you can be more succinct, sharper, and to the point, right? But now AI helps us to scale and accelerate that path. Like one of the tool that we normally use is like Gong, for example. By the way, I'm not being sponsored by Gong, but like just a tool that I'm used for. Uh,
We use
and
Gong
and then
too.
Gong helps us a lot. Yeah, exactly, right? So that helps us a lot because it's not just recording, but it helps us to understand how's the interactions, the dynamics, the summary, and we also encourage the people in GitLab to listen to each other Gong recording to really learn from each other as well. So that helps us to to improve the way we run sales, the way we do pitches and messaging to the customers as well. Last but not least is in the area what I call as personalization, right? Because like in the past when you want to personalize, you got to or personalize when it comes to email outreach and everything else, you really got to type it one by one. You really have to think of either other than that, if you're not doing that, you will sound templatized. Now AI can help you a lot in that because AI can automate part of the research, part of the knowledge that you and information that you want, and it can craft out emails or messaging that can help you in the outreach and personalize to your target audience itself. Right. So I think the way I look at it, AI helps us a lot in the areas and part of the job that normally it requires a lot of manual work, a lot of hours. It automates, it accelerates, and it helps salespeople to sell better and sell faster as well.
Completely agree. I think like of course recruitment is also sales, right? So I think like you use Gong, we use OpenAI. I think the real value of AI is more freeing up time for salespeople to focus on relationships and strategy rather than just doing all the admin, right? So completely agree with you on that. I think moving on to our next question, you also talk about how as your company has been positioning itself as a platform that helps companies to consolidate their tools, basically doing more with less, right? Which is something every business leader is talking about right now. How has that shift shifted your go-to-market strategy and the conversations you're having with your customers?
I think this is a question that really resonates deeply with me, and especially and there is a recency effect as well because like two months ago we have a large event here in Singapore. Large we run normally every year we run a world tour, and we normally run it in Singapore. This year it's in September. So in the opening of the sessions, our APJ VP was asking the audience basically a live survey kind of exercise to see how many tools that people are using in their DevOps toolchain. Guess what? Majority of the room, right? They lift up their hands, or they basically acknowledge and resonate when we talk about like, are you using more than 10 tools in your DevOps toolchain today? Now that's amazing thing, and that's really a lot of tools that you use. DevOps is not just a single thing, right? But a continuous process and multiple things that you need to do. Now imagine having 10 plus different tools that you need to continually integrate, stitch, and you continually need to change and switch context to just to do the entire DevOps itself, right? So, and imagine as well on the flip side, if we can simplify that into just one single platform that you can use for every single thing, right? So I think that's the power that of GitLab and where we want to position ourselves differently. Like it's not just and it is a lot of consolidation itself. It helps to company to improve the developer productivity, but at the same time, it also helps in many ways, in many different area of security and everything else. Now that changed fundamentally how we sell because it's not just product features, but it's a different approach altogether in the DevOps. So what it means is we need to talk to many different stakeholders in the customer organizations. We're not just talking to the engineers, we're not just talking to the DevOps, we're also talking to the InfoSec team, we're also talking to the CFO, of a finance team, and everyone else. But at the same time, we also need to understand that we are not just talking about the tools, but we are talking about the business impact itself. What does it bring to the table to the business? If we can reduce the number of tools, how does it mean? What does it mean to the customer total cost of ownership, for example? Or if we can reduce the developer context switching, what kind of productivity uplift that we can bring to the table as well? So, and to the security team, if we can reduce multiple tools into single tools, what does it feel to reduce your security exposures or security surveys into one, right? So that's have a lot of ramifications in the way our customers run business as well. So this shifted our go-to-market strategy, like it's not just speed and feeds and features, right? Really to the business outcome itself. And I see that a lot in my previous organization as well. It's not just in GitLab, but also when I was in AWS, right? It's not just about the tools, the services, or the products that you sell, but really the business outcome, right? So the conversations starts from the higher part of the organizations, understanding the customer business priorities and everything else, right? So So the key of our GTM strategy today really is not talking about features, but talking about value, right? So we do value engineering early. We do talk about business value services as well with the customers early to really help them to realize the value of using GitLab into their entire DevSecOps toolchain.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that definitely seems very necessary in today. I think there's so many tools that are being used. I think it's good to have
Yeah.
something there. You can use one platform as a whole instead of using 10 different tools.
Mm.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing. I think in our previous conversation, you also mentioned that I guess while AI and automation are changing the way sales operates, I think the
Mm.
human side is now more important than ever, right? Especially around
Yeah.
operational excellence and growth mindset. So in your opinion, I know you're growing your team, right? So what kind of skills or traits do you think a modern sales professional needs today to stay competitive in a B2B tech sales role?
That's a lot to unpack, by the way, because there are so many skills and there's so many things that someone needs to be successful in the sales role. Like I think there are things that stays for. I mean, there's things that stays like that for a long time, but um, this is a really questions that I've been thinking myself as well when I come to coaching my team, when it comes to hiring, and I think this is not something that is going to be constant. It's something that's going to be evolving as well, right? See, because I think the way I look at it, the skills that made someone successful in sales 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, are not necessarily the same skills that's going to make them successful today, right? So with that, let me talk about there are several shifts that's happening in the industry in the sales itself. I think one of the things that I see is really coming back to my previous point is really business, right? I think salespeople today really need to be a business consultants beyond a product pusher, right? They need to understand the product, sure. But I think beyond that, they need to be able to articulate the business value. What does it mean to the customers? And it's not just about like telling information to the customer, but really, so what? So what it means to the customer, right? Because like today in the information age, in the AI age, right? Even our prospect, our customers can easily look for informations
Mm-hmm.
in the web, from the AI, from ChatGPT or whatsoever, right? But translating that into their business, having someone that can able to architect the solutions for your business is where we add value, right? I think that's the first shift. And the second shift that I see is like as the product gets more technical, right? And I think the expectations today is like salespeople is not just about building a relationship, although that still matters, but you need to understand about your product. You need to be a little bit technically adapt, I would say, in terms of what your product entails, right? And I think, sure, for example, in GitLab, I don't expect people to be able to code, to be able to use the entire DevSecOps tool and everything else, but they need to understand what it means. What is CI/CD, right? What is containerization? What's deploying? What does deploy means, and so on and so forth. Why it matters because as we speak to the customers, like we can't just come there with relationship and say, hey, my product is the best. But we need to be able to carry a credible conversations with technical folks as well, right? Even up to the VP of engineering, for example. So I think this is really important one. I think, and the third one that I see is you touch upon it a little bit, and I think a little bit counterintuitive in the era of AI because in the AI world, everyone talks about automate, accelerate, speed up, like everything that you can do faster. But I think as a salespeople in the era of AI, it's not just about accelerations and automations, but how we can humanize and personalize, right? I think the human touch matters. I think more than ever itself, right? So I think how we can have the emotional intelligence and the relationship building matters most in terms of not just building the relationship, but really to understand what this product, what the solutions, what the problem means to the customer, to the stakeholders that we are talking to, right? So having that ability to understand is going to help a long way. And I think the last but not least, I talk about it a little bit. I think really now we are evolving very fast, especially in the era of AI. Um, I think the ability to uh, continually, learn new things, the agility, the curiosity mindset, or what I call as growth mindset is very, very critical as a sales people, right? I think we should not stop learning, not just about the product, but also about the process, but also about how we reach out to customer, what does the market evolve and everything else. So I think all of these things matters when I'm looking for someone and when I'm looking for modern sales professionals, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this kind of leads on to our last question. I think you touched on, being a bit more technical, having like articulate the kind of the value of your product or how
Mm,
your product can impact your customers, and also kind of emotional intelligence, right? I guess
yeah.
hiring came up in our conversation just now, and you also mentioned that you are a fully remote company, right? So that
Yes,
that
we
also
are.
brings yeah, so that brings again a problem to a lot of similar hiring managers, right? If you're a remote first environment like GitLab, how do you access those traits when you're interviewing or building teams across different regions?
Really great question, and it's not something it's not easy, right? I think that's something that we continually fine tune, continually refine, and I'm not saying that whatever approach that I'm doing or we have been doing is the most accurate or the best one, but I think there's something that we found working. Um, I think I think if I'm looking into the what I'm looking for from a salespeople, if I distill that into three things, right? I think number one is the relationship building, but more importantly is stakeholders mapping, right? So I think one thing that we want to understand from the candidate is how they do stakeholders mapping. How can they speak to different stakeholders, which may come from different persona, different background, different interests, right? So you can do it from a different. You can use different way to assess that aspect. You can look at from the past, from the way they from a behavioral questions, or but one thing that I really like also to do is to use a case study, for example. So that's where you present a case to the candidates and to see how they prepare, how they research, how they map out the business problems to stakeholders and how they carry conversations, right? So because especially in the remote environment, you can't just connect emotionally or with gut feel, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
words matter, how you show up matters, how you convey and how you communicate matters, right? So I think that's where I want to see how candidates come up from the case and into the presentation itself when it comes to relationship building. And I think number two, when I'm looking into candidates, is really the operational excellence as well, right? Especially in remote where you cannot just go to someone on the other side of the table or the other side of the office and tap them and ask for help. I think we need someone that knows how to build a system, that knows how they can be operationally excellent even in the remote environment. They know their tools, they know the processes, they build systems around themselves, around what they need to do on a day-to-day basis, right? Especially in sales, I would love to understand how someone built their pipe generations cadence, right? Because as sales is super important for them to continually pipe gen, right? How they do pipe gen, and what kind of things they do, what is the preparations look like, how they break down their target into activity, into input metrics that they need to do. I think all of those things I would like to understand from candidates. And I think last but not least, coming to the growth mindset part, this is tricky because, like, I mean, everyone can say I have growth mindset, but but I think it's not just telling, but showing that, right? I think what I'd like to see from candidate when it comes to growth mindset are two things, right? Number one, how do they learn from mistake or failures in the past, right? I think that's important. And also the other thing is, if in the face of feedback or objections, how do they take it, right? Is sure, as sales we are trained to do objection handling, but at the other part of it we also need to be able to take feedback and improve from there, right? So I think that those are important elements that I'm looking for when I'm hiring, especially remotely. Assessing this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be, I can't just stand and feel it as if someone's standing or sitting in front of me, but I really need to assess it properly, as well as I need to understand how the candidate come up. So, but I think that's where in our processes as well, it's not just about like having a conversations, but also we ask the candidate to prepare certain things. We incorporate some asynchronous culture or tasks and mechanism to see how they write something, how they build and document something, how they structure their thoughts into words, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of those things matter as we assess the culture fit and culture additions to GitLab as well. But I think, yeah, so I think that's the way I look at it. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'd really love to hear from everyone else as well, how they do interviews, how they hire the best salespeople for their organizations too.
Interesting. And part of the interview process, do you also incorporate other people in the sales team to interview your candidates, or is it just hiring managers?
No, sure. Of course, there are multiple people and there are multiple steps. They are in the process. In fact, the way I look at even our recruiter is part of the hiring process as well. Like I mean, like the the way I look at it, I look at my recruiter as a partner. Like they need to understand what I'm looking for, what the business is looking for, and they also assess the candidates. Like and beyond that, I'm also involved like different functions as well into it because I do believe when it comes to assessing candidates, you need to look at it from different angles, right? I do not want to have bias or personal bias into it as much as I make the decisions at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be so interesting working in a remote first environment. I think I
I
do
know.
manage all sales hires, right? And I make it a point to meet all of them before I send them across. So you have a whole
Mm,
idea of what kind of personality they are because interview is kind of prepared for, right? You know like all the questions, like how do you bounce back from failure, what are the biggest challenges. So I mean, just my curiosity, if the case study is answered the same within two candidates, what separates good from great?
it's a really great question, in fact, right? Um, but I think yes, as much as the case study are the same, but I think it's really how much they like how what they put into it, right? And in fact, it's a really fair question because in these days and age, right? Someone can even like take the case study, upload it to ChatGPT or something else, and then ChatGPT come up with the answers to it, right? Now, but it's not just about the answers and the presentation itself, but how do they come up? How do they show up? How do they come up with it? And as normally the way I look at it is we need to peel the layers. Like that's something that I learned from my previous organizations. We need to peel the onions, like ask multiple questions, like ask why multiple times to really understand the thought process and to really to know what goes behind the mind of the candidates as they are preparing this, as they're doing. Are they there as an observer? Are they there as a doer, or something else? Right. So I think by asking more questions into in the interview itself, it allows us to unpack and to really to understand the candidate's mind better. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, definitely going to take this conversation out of this podcast. But for now, I think thank you so much for sharing. And as a wrap for
Yeah.
this episode of Let's Talk Evolution, I think a really big thank you to Vincent for joining us. I know he was flying all around this month.
Likewise.
And, and also sharing your insights on how AI is redefining the world of sales, right? From empowering teams, simplifying processes, to reshaping what a great sales team looks like in this modern era. Right, so we come to the end. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to give us a follow, leave us a comment, and share this episode with your network. We've got more conversations coming your way, so stay tuned.